Teaching and learning with Mr. Miller. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Teaching and Learning with Mr. Miller. Today we're going to be looking at setting up a Premiere Pro project. So this is going to be the first of a couple of videos just showing you how to set up a Premiere Pro project and do the basics of editing. So the first thing you're going to want to do, obviously, is you're going to want to open up Adobe Premiere Pro. It's the icon with the P and the R. Now if you've got Adobe Creative Cloud, you should probably download that along with some other things like After Effects, Audition. We'll probably be using those a little bit later. But for the sake of getting this one done, just download Premiere Pro. Now one of the questions a lot of my students ask me is, can I use other editing software? Absolutely, of course. There's Final Cut. Final Cut and Premiere are incredibly similar, and there was about 10 years ago a bit of a battle between them and which one was going to win. They're pretty much the same nowadays though. There's also Sony Vegas, which I don't even know if it's still going. I don't know if people are using that, but you can if you want to. There's things like iMovie. I wouldn't recommend using that. That's incredibly basic and you'll run into some problems later on with things that you want to do. There's, DaVinci Resolve. I think that's a free one. That's not too bad for a free one. In fact, it's actually excellent for a free one. But like I said, we're just going to use Adobe Premiere Pro because that's what I've always used, and I'm a bit of a fan of Adobe because of Photoshop and things like that. So I'm just going to stick with that. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you open up Premiere Pro and you get this dialog box is you're going to want to go to New Project because we're going to set up a new project. And then you're going to get something like this. Now, to be honest, most of these things here are all okay. But you do want to make sure that you're getting these set up correctly first time round. First things first, you can see that the project's called Untitled. We don't want to call this Untitled because if you keep calling your projects Untitled, you're going to have loads of projects called Untitled, Untitled 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're not going to know what they are. So my recommendation is make this as clear as possible. I'm going to call this Premiere Tutorial. And I'm going to try and spell that right as well. Because now I know what that is. If you're using a computer or a device which you're sharing, maybe put your name at the end of it as well, just so you know exactly whose it is. Some people like to date it, but you can always find the date in the file otherwise. And the next thing that is really important is to save the location, because the amount of students that I have saying that they can't find their project afterwards because they didn't get that sorted. Now I'm going to save mine to my desktop by clicking there and then going to Desktop. I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call it the same thing. Premiere Tutorial, Mr. Miller. Okay, and now I've got my folder there and I know that everything's going to be saved in it. Now I've saved mine to my desktop, which isn't really the safest place, but this isn't going to take too long to do and I'm pretty sure that this won't get lost. And if it does get lost, I don't really mind. I can always do it again anyway. Now all of these things you don't need to worry about for this tutorial. We might look at them a little bit later, but they're perfectly fine. Scratch discs you might want to click on and just make sure it says same as project. That's a recommendation of mine there, is make sure it says same as project for every single one of these things. Okay, but then we click OK. So just to cover that again, name it, save it to a certain location, and just double check that these say same as project. When you click OK, it's going to open up your Adobe Premiere Pro project, and it might look a little bit different to mine because I've set mine up in a way that I like to work. I would recommend setting up this way as well, but you don't need to. If for any reason your project ever looks a way that you don't want it to look, as in the layout, all of these things move around, you can always go to Window, Workspace, and then Reset to Saved. And then it will reset to how it originally started, which is what yours will probably look something like this. You've only got like 5 windows open, and you can move them around as you need to. Now these are quite interesting things that you might keep coming back to. You can use these if you want to. I basically do everything in the editing tab, and you can find that manually by going to Workspaces and choosing them individually there. I always use editing because that's got everything in it that I need. You can use assembly to assemble your stuff. Get rid of that. You can use the assembly to assemble your stuff, and then editing to edit it, color to do the color effects as you need to. But to be honest, you can do everything in editing. The only other one I do use is color, and we will do a tutorial on that as well a little bit later. But for sake of argument, I'm just going to stick to editing now. Now, the windows that I use are these ones here, but also just a couple more. The first things I do is I make sure I get effects control, and I click and I hold and I move that and I drag it until it goes to that there. Okay, and it looks like that. If you've just tried doing that and you've ruined it, remember, window, workspace, reset. You can reset it as you need to, that's perfectly fine. When you do that, you've got your effects control, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But then you realise that you lost that first one there. Just be aware that you can find it again. You can go to source, which is my recommendation. So have source, effects control, and then you've got this, which is your final output. There's nothing there because we haven't done anything yet. And what I like to do is I like to also get the effects here, and I'm going to drag that and do the same thing. So I'm going to put it there where it gets to that right side there. And then again, it's gone onto markers there. I don't want that. I want it to say the project. Now I can move this around a little bit. I don't really need that much space for the timeline. I definitely don't need that much space for the tools. I don't really need that much space for the effects. Maybe I can move that back a little bit. There you go, that looks good. Don't really need that much space for the effects controls either. Maybe a little bit more than that. I like to get mine looking a little bit like that. Now what I can do is I can actually go to workspace and I can save that as a new workspace. But I'm not going to bother with it because I often change these as well. Okay, so these are what you've got at the moment. These, what is it, 7 windows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, there we go. So this is where all your assets will be. And what I mean by assets is footage, you know, your video that you're going to edit, maybe some audio, titles, any other things that you're going to put on there. That's where you're going to put those there. Above that, you've got your source, and these are your sources. So every time you've got something there, it'll show there, which is quite handy. You've got your effects controls, so any effects that you've put on your things are going to show there, and these are the effects that you can use. Again, we will get onto doing effects a little bit later, probably not in this session. We've got our tools here, which we're going to use. We don't really use many of them for a simple project. We're going to use the selection tool, shortcut V. We're probably going to use the type tool. There are some other things as well, like I like the track select forward tool. That's quite handy. I think there's like a ripple one as well, which ripple delete. Can't remember where that is. There it is, ripple edit tool. That usually works quite well. And then what we've got here is our timeline, and this is going to be everything that we're going to be putting into our sequence is going to be here. Again, we haven't got anything to edit. We haven't edited anything yet, so there's nothing there. Not to mention we haven't actually created a sequence, which is what we're going to do next. And then everything that you've edited, this will be your final output. So that's a little bit of a layout as to what Premiere looks like, how Premiere works. The first thing we're going to want to do once we've set up our project, and we've got that saved, is we're going to want to go, well, first thing, you're going to want to press Command S. That's saving. That's File, Save. Please make sure you do that regularly, okay? If you make any big changes, Control S, because otherwise, if you lose your project, it may not have saved it. Premiere does do quite a good job at saving your project intermittently, but if you can do it manually, that'll work out well for you. The other one you want to press is Command Z for undo, because we're going to make mistakes, okay? It's going to happen. And instead of trying to fix those mistakes, we're just going to try and edge backwards. So, setting up a new sequence. What you want to do is you want to go to File, New, and then Sequence, okay? Yeah, you can press Command N. I'm not really going to use the shortcuts too often because I want you to know how to do these manually. But just so you know for later, yeah, it's Command N. Now, when I create this, it's going to give me loads of presets. For some reason, it seems to default onto DV-PAL or DV-NTSC, which we're not actually using DV. That's DV tape, and I haven't used DV tape in, I don't know, over 10 years. There's other things there as well, which you can see. There's things like RED cameras. RED, by the way, is what is cinema cameras. You know, they're the ones that if you're going to buy the camera, you're probably going to have to sell your house for it. You can see there's other things like if you're using Canon cameras, specific Canon camera there. There's the ARRI, that uses the Alexa, again another Hollywood cinema camera. We're not using those. Now, there are options that you can use. Many people go for digital SLR, which is probably what we're using, and you've got some things there. I always use AVCHD, because in AVCHD you've got a few options of what we're going to be using. You've got two 1080s there, and you've got a 720. Now this refers to the pixel aspect ratio. It refers to how high quality your video is. Yeah, you can go up to things like 4K if you're using 4K. We're not going to be using 4K for any of my projects. If you want to do that, we can change that later. We're usually going to be using 1080, which means 1080 pixels. Was it down? I think it is, isn't it? And there's also 720 as well. These are full HD. 720 is technically full HD, although we don't really seem to class it as full HD anymore. 1080p is probably what we're going to be going for. If you're one of my students, I'm going to recommend that you use 1080p. Now the difference between P and I means interlaced, P means progressive, P means video, I means you're making it for television. You'd probably, if you're ever working with me, you're probably never going to use this. So let's just go for 1080p. And then you've got loads of stuff there which sounds quite complicated. ABC HD 1080p, and then you've got a number at the end. The number at the end refers to the frame rate. By the way, if I'm talking about these things and you don't know what they are, don't worry. If you're one of my students, you're going to learn these things later on. Okay, there will be specific videos about this. But it means how many frames there are in every second. So that's 60 frames a second, 50 frames a second, 30, 25, and 24. Now, cinema is and has always been, really, I mean not always, but let's say for the sake of argument, 24 frames a second. Okay, so the famous Jean-Luc Godard quote is, cinema is just life, but in 24 frames a second. We do tend to work in 30 frames a second quite regularly from now on. We don't use 50 or 60. I mean, if you're making one of those gaming videos, and yeah, you're probably doing that, okay, and you probably love that sort of stuff, and that's perfectly fine, but we're not making gaming videos here, we're trying to make film and cinema. So I'm going to recommend that we go for 24 frames a second. That's my recommendation. Anamorphic refers to the lenses you're using. Okay, and if you're wondering whether you filmed with an anamorphic lens or not, I'll tell you, you haven't filmed with an anamorphic lens. Okay, because anamorphic lenses, yeah, you'll have to remortgage if you've got one of those. Okay, we are not using anamorphic lenses. So, if you're wondering, sake of argument, ABC HD, 1080p, 24. There we go. And there you go. There's your sequence. You can rename that if you want to by double-clicking on the word sequence 1. You can rename that, but I'm not going to, because I'm only going to have one sequence. Okay. You don't have to rename everything. It is good practice, but you're going to be there all day otherwise. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new bin here. Okay, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to new bin. A bin means folder. The reason they've called it a bin is because in the olden days when you used to film with celluloid, actual film, material film, they used to keep them in bins. Bit annoying because, it's basically just a folder. And I'm going to call that footage. So I can put all of my footage in there. Now, yours may not look like that. Yours may look like this. Some people like that. I don't work like that. I can't work like that. So you can change those with these buttons just here. I'm going to go for list view. I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to call that sound. Actually, let's call it audio. That's a better phrase, isn't it? Because that could be sound effects and it can be music as well. There are other things I can create there, but I don't need to for the sake of this. I suppose another one actually I do create is miss, as in miscellaneous, as in anything else. Right, I've just made some changes, Command S, save that, and there we go. Now I'm ready to edit any footage. Now chances are, if you're watching this, I've actually got you recording and filming some footage already. You've actually got footage ready to go. I don't. And if you don't, that's fine, you can do what I'm going to do. I've got these two websites here. I've got this one called Pexels, which is a free stock video community. So you can download these and you are free to use them, okay? You're going to get what you pay for, so it's probably not going to be fantastic, although some of this footage looks nice. Look, it looks like some drone footage there, okay? And I'm just going to experiment with those. Also, there's YouTube audio library. Again, you get what you pay for. It's not fantastic, but some of this stuff is all right. Sometimes they do ask for payment or they ask for recognition. That one's a fantastic name, which I'm probably going to use in a minute because it's Angry Dance and it's called Cat Shat in a Box. We're definitely going to be using that one in a minute, whatever it sounds like. Right, so let's download some videos. Well, you know what? That drone one actually looked pretty good. Oh, there's a drone one. Let's go for that. Just going to download this. Yeah, no. What else do I want? You know what? I've got beach here, so let's go for something beachy. Yeah, that's more drone, beachy stuff. And let's get one more. There we go. Maybe let's get one more. People love filming beaches. Actually, I'm going to get one more as well because I've seen this one's going to be quite good for a later video when I do color correction. So let's get that. There we go. Right, so now I've got some clips. You can see they're all downloading at the bottom there. And if I go over to my downloads folder, you can see they're all there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, they're not named very well, and I could rename them here if I wanted to, but I don't need to. I'm just going to work with them as they are. One thing I am going to do, though, is I'm going to move them, okay? I'm going to take them out of my downloads folder because that is not a safe and secure place. My recommendation is keep all of your assets in one place. For example, I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call that footage. I'm going to sort that by name as well, just so it's a little bit cleaner. And I'm going to drag all that stuff into this folder here. Okay, that's just a little bit more safe. That's a little bit more secure. That will stop you running into problems later. I almost promise you. Right, let's get rid of that. Let's go. Let's get a sound. What does this sound like? Yep, I'm definitely having that. That is awful in all the right ways. Okay, so that's downloaded as well. You can see that's there. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call that audio. Chuck that in there. You know what? I think I'll get another one as well because I've got a feeling I'm going to have to do a video on audio. What else have we got? Should we go for, you know what? He's got a few there. Let's go for, no. Yeah, love it. I'm hoping it's just 3 minutes of that. And that'll be there again. Let's drag that in. Right, there we go. Done with my downloads. Done with that as well. Okay, right. So now I've got footage, now I've got audio. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to import that stuff in. Okay, so I'm going to go to audio and I'm going to highlight the audio because I'm going to bring the audio in first. And I'm going to go to File and Import. Okay, so making sure I've got that audio folder highlighted, I'm going to go to Import. This will import it into the audio folder. So where was it? It was on desktop, wasn't it? Oh, there we go. It's right there. Audio, and highlight those, and I'll import those there. There we go, and they've gone into there. Okay, perfect. Next thing, I got footage. If I highlight the footage folder, File, Import. By the way, that's Command-I if you need to. And let's go for the footage. And there you go. So you can see if it's got a green box, it means it's got audio. If it doesn't have audio and it's just visual. So now what we want to do is we want to start editing, okay? Now there is something that I tend to do when I start editing because I'm probably not going to be using it. Is you can see this says 5.1 next to it. 5.1 means stereo surround sound. I'm just going to right click and I'm going to delete that track. Okay, and then I'm going to do it again with all of the stereo ones. That will stop you running into problems later. Do that if you want to. You don't need to if you don't want to. And now you can see I've got video 1, video 2, video 3, audio 1, audio 2, audio 3. So these bottom 3 here are my audio tracks. This top one here is my video tracks. And I've got my master audio at the very end there as well, which I'm probably not going to use. So first things first, let's get our footage on there. Now I'm just going to drag this clip over. Try and drag it on the actual icon. Yeah, don't drag it by the name, because if you drag it by the name, sometimes it's going to ask you to rename it. Now you can rename it here if you want to. Now if you don't know what the clip is, double click on it and it will come up in the source thing. Loads of my students like to look through the clips that they filmed before they bring it into Premiere. Don't bother with it, just bring it in. Bring it all in, you can delete it if you want to. So this is what my footage looks like. Yeah, there we go. That looks like nice, simple drone footage of some waves. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now you can use these markers if you want to. You know what? You don't need to. Just drag it on, and you can chop it up in a second. I'm going to drag it onto video 1. I would recommend dragging it onto video 1. Now, when I do that, it's saying this clip does not match the sequence settings. What it means by that is the settings on the camera when it was filmed do not match what the way I've set up my sequence. Remember, I set up as 1080p with 24 frames a second. This might be 4K at 60 frames a second. But I don't want to edit the way they filmed it. I want to edit the way that I'm editing. I want it to come out as 1080, 24 frames a second. So I'm going to keep my existing settings. This might make it look weird. Right, I can see already that it's zoomed in. I think I know why that is. And if I right click on the clip and I go to Properties, so I'm going to right click and go to Properties, it's going to tell me what it is. Right, image size. It is not 1080p. This is 4K. Although it is 24 frames a second. Well, it's actually 23.976 because that's for the drop frame for the color, but we'll talk about that one later. So that means that this is bigger. This clip is actually bigger than my canvas. The actual footage probably goes way up past there. But that's fine. We can scale it down. Scaling it down isn't going to reduce the quality. If I was editing at 4K and I had 1080 footage, I'd have to blow it up, okay? And that pixelates it. We don't really want to do that. But this way, we're working fine. So we're going to make this clip smaller. The way we're going to do that is by right-clicking, and we're going to go to Scale to Frame Size. Okay, so by right-clicking and going to Scale to Frame Size, I'm going to turn this 4K footage into 1080. There it goes. Another way you can do that is, and I don't know if you noticed, but by clicking on that clip, my effects controls gives me everything I've got about it. I could have just changed the scale there. Hello. Right, what could I've just changed that there. What could I do? I could try and fix it, or your best friend, Command Z. I'll tell you what, why don't you press Command S as well while you're on it. Let's save it. There we go. So there's my first clip. Okay, I've literally just dragged it on. Okay. Now that looks like it's too small for me to edit there. So if you press the plus and minus keys on your keyboard, you can zoom in and you can zoom out. You can see it's actually doing it there as well. So there we go. So this clip is, and I'm grabbing my playhead there. This is called scrubbing, by the way. Okay, so instead of just pressing play and watching it, you can just kind of click and just scrub through it. Sometimes that works better. Okay, so this clip is 15 seconds long. I don't want 15 seconds of it, I only want 10 seconds of it. So let's go to 10 seconds. I can do that there by just clicking 10. By the way, that refers to hours, minutes, seconds, and then frames. So that'll go up to 24. If it goes up to 25, it'll be an extra second. Right, there we go. So that's 10 seconds. Now, the two ways I can shorten this is I can either, one, grab my razor tool here, which is C, not R. I know, right? Confusing. And I can click there. Grab my movie tool, my selection tool, and there you go. Other ways I can do that, much easier actually, is I can just hover over the end. You see that red bracket? That's asking me if I want to shorten it down. And there we go. So the first 10 seconds is just that. Now this doesn't have any audio. So what I can do now is I can go to my audio and I can put my first song down. I'm going to go for Ya Ya. And I'm going to put that. I can't put it on the video because it's not video, but I can put it on the audio. And there we go. So I've got my audio. So now I can go, if I press play or spacebar, there you go. And now I can put another clip down as well. Now if I put this clip, I can see this has got audio, so let's double click it and let's have a look at it. Yep, that looks lovely. So I'm going to drag that on. Now if I try and put it onto video 1, you can see what's going to happen. It's deleted that audio. Command Z, let's undo that. Well, let's drag it onto video 2 then. And then I don't want this sound, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to unlink. I'm going to click on the audio and there we go, and I've got rid of it. I'll show you that again quickly, even though you could just watch the video again. Okay, so moving those, it selects both of those. Right click, unlink, click the audio and delete it. And there you go. And now I've got, when it decides to play. There you go, perfect. And I'll zoom out by pressing the minus key on my keyboard. If it's going to work. Okay, now that looks a lot bigger than the first one. So if I just move it above, I can see actually, if I make it 10 seconds, I can just line those up, and now I've got 20 seconds worth of footage. Because 10 plus 10 is 20. I'm getting some maths there. There we go, and that should go all the way up to 20 seconds. There we go. Right then, that's the end of the tutorial. In the next class, I'll show you how to change some things. I'll show you how to change the audio, I'll show you how to put some effects in it, and kind of finish off a project as we need to. Thank you, ladies and gents. See you next time.